to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. This upcoming Saturday, Canada's own Kim Clavel will make her bid to become a two-time light flyweight champion when she takes on Evelyn Bermudez of Argentina, who holds the IBF and WBO titles.
What do we need to know?
Kim Clavel sports a professional record of 17 wins with just one loss, no draws.
3 knockouts.
To Evelyn Bermudez, who sports a professional record of 18 wins with just one loss, no draws.
6 knockouts.
Evelyn Bermudez is the comparatively stronger puncher who last saw action earlier this year in March against Tania Enriquez, rebounding off the loss to Yokasta Valle late last year.
Evelyn lost her 2 alphabet titles in the Valle fight and subsequently won them back in the Enriquez fight.
That's because after Yokasta beat Evelyn, she vacated the 2 alphabet titles she won right after that. And those 2 alphabet titles were then made available for the Bermudez versus Enriquez fight, which took place earlier this year.
Evelyn won.
Kim Clavel was also in action earlier this year in May, rebounding off the loss to Jessica Neri Plata in January.
So both fighters have seen action in the last 12 months. Nobody has any ring rust they need to shake off.
It's good, though. It's good that Kim Clavel has seen action 2 times in the same calendar year, because that means she'll be as sharp as she's going to be the night of the fight.
Sharp as she can be.
Kim Clavel, who may be 7 years older and some inches smaller than Evelyn Bermudez, but she is the comparatively much faster fighter, the much more athletic fighter of the 2.
Coordinated.
The noticeably faster fighter of the 2, more athletic fighter of the 2, very sharp.
Fast.
Fighting at a slight crouch, bending at the waist, bending at the knees, bobbing and weaving under punches.
Slipping punches.
She is the more fluid fighter of the 2, whereas Evelyn Bermudez is comparatively more static, more upright, easier target, easier to hit.
She is 7 years younger than Kim Clavel, though noticeably slower.
Slower hands, slower feet.
What she makes up for in power and durability.
She is a stronger puncher than Kim Clavel comparatively. She is stronger and more durable,
albeit slower and more flat-footed.
I like the level changes and angles from Kim Clavel mid-range to inside to fluster Evelyn Bermudez in the pocket. You know, that's what lost her the Yokasta Valle fight. Yokasta Valle, like Kim Clavel,
she was the shorter fighter with the lower center of gravity.
She moved up in weight for that fight, from minimum weight up to light flyweight, and her speed, combinations, and lower center of gravity allowed her to fluster Evelyn Bermudez mid-range to inside. I think Kim Clavel could do the same.
She's elusive.
At that range, she's tricky. And because Evelyn Bermudez's torso is so static during a fight, she's so upright.
She's stiff.
Evelyn Bermudez's best punches are her straight punches, though mid-range to inside, the work can get messy.
The jab-right hand combination is an effective combination for Evelyn Bermudez on the back foot or the front foot.
Though not always defensible. She can be countered, she can be peppered with punches.
Her punches are wide.
Can be caught between the punches. Evelyn Bermudez holding her feet and moving back in straight lines.
A shorter, sharper puncher can exploit that. A short, sharp puncher like Kim Clavel.
Punches are comparatively more compact than Evelyn Bermudez's punches, with more snap on them.
Yeah.
Shorter, tighter punches that leave Kim Clavel in an optimal position to bring over other punches or weave under punches.
She's good.
It makes a difference that the shorter fighter with the lower center of gravity is also the faster fighter. That can fluster Evelyn Bermudez in the pocket, not dissimilar from what we saw in the Yokasta Valle fight. That's how Yokasta beat her. That's why she beat her.
I think Kim Clavel can do the same. She just has to be careful not to get greedy with her combinations and sit in the pocket for too long.
She just has to stay tricky, stay elusive. Keep that head off center, angling off.
Slipping, rolling, riding, bobbing, and weaving under punches.
Countering with hooks. Kim Clavel has some beautiful counter hooks mid-range to inside. This is how she can effectively catch Evelyn Bermudez between the punches.
Yeah.
Evelyn Bermudez, whose best punches are her straight punches, though they're wide. These are looping shots.
She's strong.
She's got more power than Kim, and she can take a shot, she can take a punch. She's rough and rugged, as Argentinian fighters often are. But she is slower, punches wider, can be countered.
Kim Clavel is an educated counterpuncher.
Great slip and counter hooks, roll and counter hooks. Kim Clavel is effective mid-range to inside. In this weekend's fight, I believe that's going to be her sweet spot where she will do her best work.
Some inches shorter than Evelyn Bermudez, who's the taller, longer, rangier fighter. That's working to Kim's advantage.
In tandem with her base style, that makes her a tricky and very small target for what is a very wide puncher.
I like Clavel on points.
I like Kim Clavel to outmaneuver and out-hustle Evelyn Bermudez this weekend for the WBO and IBF light flyweight titles. I think Kim is going to see herself become a two-time light flyweight champion this weekend, though it will take some doing because Evelyn is the stronger puncher and she's durable. It's not likely that Kim knocks her out
or even hurts her.
Stronger punchers than Kim Clavel have tried, but what Kim can do is fluster her, stun her,
out-hustle her for 10 rounds. I think she can do it. I've got Kim Clavel winning this weekend.
Will that be Teo's next fight?
Yes.
Against Ryan?
Hopefully against Ryan. I can't guarantee that, but that's what Teo is looking at.
Because Ryan has a fight coming up November, and then we're headed into that. You're getting me excited now.
Yeah, that's true.
Good. Yes, that's what we need, those types of fights. Bob, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's a blockbuster fight as well.
I can certainly relate to Marcos Villegas' enthusiasm at the prospect of seeing a Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez fight early next year in perhaps the first or second quarter. Now, Ryan Garcia is supposed to be returning to action before this year is out against Oscar Duarte, and we'll talk about that fight.
If he makes it through it, he may be facing Teofimo next.
And it's not one way. You're hearing encouraging news from the Bob father, from Bob Arum, but you're also hearing that news from Oscar De La Hoya, who stated, "What a great meeting with Bob father. I'm calling all promoters to unite and make the biggest fights possible and best fights possible for the boxing fans."
Oscar very recently had a meeting with his old promoter.
I think people either don't know or tend to forget that Oscar De La Hoya, like many of the great fighters we've seen in the last 25, 30 years, however long, many of those fighters were top-ranked fighters first. Anyone from Oscar De La Hoya to Miguel Cotto to Manny Pacquiao to Floyd Mayweather.
Terrence Crawford.
Many of the great fighters we've seen in the last 3, 4 decades, they've been top-ranked fighters.
They have.
Oscar's call to unify, for promoters in the United States to unite and work together to continually deliver the biggest and best fights to boxing fans.
I don't think he's being disingenuous. I think he's being serious. I think Oscar sees what's going on with the PBC. He sees what's going on with Showtime. He sees where the sport is now versus where it was when he was fighting, and he notices what we notice.
Let's make it make sense. We know that widespread rumors are circulating. Widespread rumors state that Showtime may be leaving the sport of boxing beyond this year. After 37 years in the sport,
they're done.
We've been talking a lot about that the last couple of days, though I've been telling you all about it the last 2 or 3 years, that it's a distinct possibility based on the viewing figures they're producing.
It's not sustainable.
This is a numbers game, and ideally, you want to continue to put up good numbers year by year
to stay in the race,
stay in the running. Most have stated that this is the PBC's biggest year in the sport, or at minimum, one of its biggest years in the sport. But if it's that way, why is Showtime now leaving?
After such a great year, the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis numbers, the Crawford versus Spence numbers, and whatever this past weekend's fight did.
If the numbers are good, and the numbers are encouraging, why is Showtime now leaving? And it's because of what I've been telling you. It's too little, too late.
What does that have to do with Oscar?
And Oscar's call for promoters to unite. How does this relate to that? And it's because for the longest time, the sport of boxing has been divided between platforms. The sport of boxing today is a lot more fragmented than it was in previous years. And that division has only shrunken the audience.
The market for it.
The market that consumes boxing. Per reports, Al Heyman's PBC have reportedly held talks with Amazon Prime about a potential boxing broadcast deal following reports that Showtime will not be renewing their contract. It's claimed Amazon Prime is the PBC's preferred destination.
It's not new news if you've been following the channel. I told you that a little over a week ago, that Al Heyman wants to partner up with Amazon.
Twitter account that goes by the name Fight Oracle stated, LOL, Amazon doesn't hand out big money unless it's the NFL. They're not just going to write a blank check to a promoter who has been canceled by nearly every network that exists.
The PBC has been anywhere from NBC to Bounce to Spike,
Fox and FS1, and of course, Showtime, what has been their longest standing relationship, their longest standing broadcast partner. And now that broadcast partner is bailing on the sport.
after 37 years in it.
How does this relate to what Oscar De La Hoya is proposing? How do you make it all make sense? Well, the sport has become more and more divided in recent years, and that hasn't helped to grow the audience that consumes boxing. If anything, it's shrunken it.
It has.
If you have to have a DAZN subscription to see Matchroom and Golden Boy shows, and you have to have an ESPN Plus subscription to see Top Rank, then another subscription to Showtime to see PBC, well, everybody doesn't want to have to do that. Everybody doesn't have the disposable income to have all those different subscriptions for a couple of decent fights every so often.
In this economy?
Everybody doesn't have the disposable income to blow for what is little more than entertainment.
Consolidation is needed.
Unity amongst US-based promoters is needed to work together and continually deliver the biggest fights that thereby produce the biggest interest, the biggest metrics to thereby grow the size and scale of the audience, to give a much-needed shot in the arm to the American boxing scene.
The biosphere approach hasn't worked.
That's what we've been seeing year after year in recent years, the biosphere approach, where these guys are on that platform and those guys are on this one. Everything is fragmented.
The biosphere approach hasn't worked.
So it's time for something different. Perhaps a more bipartisan kumbaya approach is in order, where the promotional outfits develop some kind of bartering system that would feature their best fighters against their best fighters, the other fighters that are out there that may be with a different promotional outfit, in order to drum up interest and drum up business.
It's idealistic, I know, but the market that they cater to is not big enough for all of this infighting.
They're fighting over scraps. What is current market instability in the boxing scene today?
The house divided cannot stand.
The market today is not robust enough that these guys can operate like an island. They need each other. They need each other's fighters. You will notice that Wilder versus Fury 2 was a comparatively bigger fight than Wilder versus Fury 1, and it's likely because it had two separate promotional outfits and two separate platforms promoting the show. When you compare the numbers from the first fight to the numbers from the second fight,
The controversy helped, the scoring controversy, that helped to sell it.
but you also had two major promoters with two major platforms promoting the show, helping to increase the profile of the rematch and the subsequent third fight. You think about the more recent Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight, yet another fight that required two different promotional outfits and two different platforms to come together, and it did over 1 million buys, or 1 million buys.
Big fights.
Bigger numbers than any of these promotional outfits are putting up individually. If the biggest fight the sport has ever seen required a Heyman fighter to fight a top-ranked fighter,
That's Maypac.
commercially, that's the biggest fight the sport has ever seen. That's the fight that generated the most money at the gate and the most pay-per-views.
That's Maypac.
And if consistently these co-promotional fights put up better numbers than any of the numbers they put up individually, what does that tell you? That these promoters need to work together. Oscar and Bob Arum mean to do that with a potential Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez fight,
Provided that Ryan makes it past Oscar Duarte.
which has just been officially announced.
In trying to imagine what that fight would look like, the fight between Ryan and Teofimo, we may be getting ahead of ourselves, though. A first look.
Because Ryan's fighting Oscar Duarte next, and that will be his first fight with Derek James in his corner. We have yet to see what a Derek James version of Ryan Garcia looks like. We have yet to see if he helps to improve this fighter or if there is no improvement at all. We know that Derek's been on a bad run lately. What happened to Spence in the Crawford fight, what just happened to Jermel Charlo in the Canelo fight this past weekend, what's going to happen to Ryan?
What happens to him with Oscar Duarte?
I've heard that name thrown around here and there, though I've yet to really get a good look at him. And what I'm hearing is that he's actually a formidable fighter, and that could be a potential banana skin for Ryan, on the predication that Ryan actually makes it past that guy, what would a Teofimo Lopez fight look like? And Teofimo bears some similarities to the man that Ryan Garcia just fought. He bears some similarities to Gervonta Davis.
Believe it or not.
Now, there are some differences, some noticeable differences, that Gervonta is a southpaw, whereas Teofimo, he's an orthodox fighter, that Gervonta Davis is a shorter, stumpier guy than Teofimo. Teofimo's a bit bigger, bit beefier.
He's a bit more fidgety than Gervonta Davis, a bit more herky-jerky.
Those are the differences. What are the similarities? They're both boxer punchers. They're both counter punchers. Ambush fighters that rely on landing a big punch before moving in.
Hard to know who's the stronger puncher of the two between Teofimo and Gervonta because they don't share many, if any, common opponents. I mean, none that I know of.
Gervonta's been at lightweight since 2019, but he didn't fight Vasyl Lomachenko like Teofimo Lopez did, or Richard Comey, Masayoshi Nakatani.
George Cambodia.
Didn't fight George Camboso, so it's hard to say who's the bigger puncher of the two, but they do have similarities. They're both boxer punchers, they're both counter punchers.
And they both use a shell guard.
They both do. Neither man has all that much of a work rate within a round, because they're counter punches. They let the other guy do all the work and then counter him.
They don't throw that many punches in a round. Neither Gervonta Davis or Teofimo. I will say that to the eye, Teofimo seems a bit busier than Gervonta, but the methodology is very similar.
Teofimo sets you up. He sets you up for a hard counter, and once he lands it, then he will move in and start putting punches together.
That's what Gervonta does.
Like what he did to Leo Santa Cruz, like what he did to Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia.
He uses the other fighter's aggression against him. That's what counter punches do.
Catch weights and rehydration clauses aside, we saw what happened when Ryan shared the ring with Gervonta Davis. He looked like a man who was out of his depth. He looked like a man who was out of place. He didn't use his height, his length, and his jab to keep the smaller man at arm's length. In so many words, he charged Gervonta Davis.
Yeah.
He tried to crowd him.
Big mistake.
You give up your height to the smaller man who also happens to be a counter puncher, you know what's going to happen?
He's gonna counter punch you.
You don't want to go closing the distance on the little guy because you're doing half the work for him. You want to manage the distance. Use your height, use your jab, move your feet.
Straight punches.
Counter hooks and counter uppercuts if the smaller man slips past the jab.
Yeah.
Taking a half step back to create a bit of space as to set up that counter shot, whether it's a counter hook or a counter uppercut. No idea if Ryan has learned his lesson from the Gervonta Davis fight because that was his last fight. We haven't seen him since then.
So the edge goes to Lopez.
Who is the better, more seasoned, and experienced fighter of the two.